James Brown was on stage singing "It's a Man's World" when the sky suddenly lit up with orange light. The sound of a bomb, then another, then another. The Viet Cong attack had begun. This was June 1968, in the middle of Vietnam, outside a military hospital camp in front of 200 wounded American soldiers, and James Brown refused to put down the microphone. The commander was shouting, "Mr. Brown, get to the helicopter, now!" But James didn't, because that morning he'd made a promise to a 19-year-old soldier who died in his arms, and James Brown never broke a promise. What happened in the next 3 hours is something military historians still can't explain. Something that made both American soldiers and the Viet Cong forces trying to kill them lay down their weapons and listen, and cry. Let's go back to the beginning. May 1968. America was in the middle of the Vietnam War. Hundreds of soldiers were dying every day, thousands being wounded. The country was divided. The USO, United Service Organizations, was sending entertainers to war zones to boost soldiers' morale. Bob Hope had gone, Johnny Cash had gone, but most entertainers went to safe zones, the big bases in Saigon, clean, organized, safe concerts. James Brown wanted something different. "Send me to the worst place," he told the USO coordinator. "Send me where the dying soldiers are. They're the ones who need me most." The coordinator was shocked. "Mr. Brown, do you know what you're saying? The worst place means a war zone, active combat zone, bombs falling, bullets flying. You could die." James leaned forward, looked him in the eyes. "These kids are dying every day. They're dying for my music. The least I can do is make music for them." 2 weeks later, James Brown was sitting in a military helicopter. The pilot was shouting at him, "Mr. Brown, we're about to land 2 miles from enemy lines. If we come under attack, hit the ground and cover your head." James just nodded. Was he scared? Yes. But 200 wounded soldiers were waiting for him, and James Brown had never kept anyone waiting. When the helicopter landed, the first thing James saw was blood. The ground was red. The air smelled of hospital disinfectant and other things. It smelled of death. Commander Mark Stevens, a hard-looking man in his 40s, met James. "Mr. Brown, you're lucky you landed safely. This is a quiet day here." "Quiet?" James looked around. Explosion sounds could be heard in the distance. Helicopters were constantly coming and going. "Yes," Stevens said with a bitter smile. "A quiet day means only 15 wounded. On bad days, it can be 50. Stevens led James inside the camp. Tents, medical equipment, running doctors and nurses, and the soldiers on stretchers. Very young soldiers. "Most of these are 18, 19, 20 years old," Stevens said quietly. "Yesterday they were in school. Today they're here. Tomorrow—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They stopped in front of a tent. "Mr. Brown, I want to show you something. Be prepared." James wasn't prepared. Nobody could be prepared. Inside the tent were 30 beds. Each bed had a wounded soldier. Some had no legs. Some had no arms. Some were wrapped in bandages, only their eyes visible. But the worst part was the sound of moaning, the sound of pain, young voices making old pains. James felt his knees trembling. He wanted to cry. He wanted to run. But instead, he walked inside. He stopped by the first bed. The soldier there opened his eyes. 19, maybe 20 years old. His name was Daniel Morrison, from Ohio. His legs had been cut off from the knees down 3 days ago. "Mr. Brown?" Daniel's voice was a whisper. "Are you real?" James swallowed, tried to smile. "Yes, son, I'm real." I'm dying, aren't I?" Daniel's eyes filled. "The doctors don't say it, but I know. I can feel it." James didn't know what to say. He couldn't lie. This kid deserved the truth. "Son," James held Daniel's hand. "Are you in pain? Can I help you?" Daniel started crying. My mom is so far away, in Ohio, and I'll never see her again. I couldn't say, 'I love you,' one last time."
"Then say it now," James said softly. "I'll make sure it reaches her. Say it." Daniel closed his eyes. "Mom, I love you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't be a better son." Tears ran down James's face. "Son, you're a perfect son. Your mother is proud of you. I know it." "Mr. Brown," Daniel opened his eyes. "I grew up listening to your music. My mom used to play I Got You. We'd dance in the kitchen. When I was little, she'd pick me up. We'd spin around. Those are my happiest memories." James's heart broke. "Would you like to hear it one more time? I can sing it to you." Daniel's face lit up. "Really?" James, right there in the tent with wounded soldiers surrounded by medical equipment, started singing acapella. "I got you, I feel good." His voice started shaky but then grew stronger. The other soldiers in the tent started listening. Some were smiling, some were crying. Daniel closed his eyes, smiling. When the song ended, James was still holding his hand. But Daniel's hand wasn't holding back anymore. Daniel Morrison, from Ohio, 19 years old, died in James Brown's arms. The last sound he heard was music. James bowed his head and cried silently. A doctor came, checked Daniel's pulse, shook his head. "He's gone." James stood up. His legs were shaking. Commander Stevens led him outside. "Mr. Brown, I understand. This is too much. The helicopter's ready. We can take you back." James raised his head. There were tears in his eyes, but determination in his voice. "No. That kid wanted music. 200 more kids are waiting for me. They deserve music too. We're going ahead with the concert." Stevens looked at him with admiration. "Mr. Brown, you're different." "No," James said. "I'm just paying my debt. These kids are fighting for me. I can sing for them."
An hour later, there was a flat area outside the camp. A military platform had been set up, 3 pallets of wood, a simple microphone system. It wasn't the Hollywood Bowl, but tonight, this was the most important stage. 200 soldiers had been brought. Some could walk, some were in wheelchairs, some were carried on stretchers. Even those in the worst condition came because this was James Brown, and no soldier wanted to miss it. When James stepped on stage, he heard applause, but this wasn't normal applause. This was the applause of wounded hands. Some could only clap with one hand. "Good evening, gentlemen," James spoke into the microphone. His voice echoed. "Thank you for giving me the honor of being here tonight." A soldier shouted, "No, Mr. Brown, thank you. You came here." James smiled. "You know, a few hours ago, I didn't think I'd be here. We lost a friend, Daniel Morrison, from Ohio." Silence. Some soldiers knew Daniel. "Daniel's last wish was music, and I made myself a promise. I'll sing for Daniel, and for everyone like him who won't make it home." James started, "I Got You," but this time it was different, slower, deeper, more painful. Every word was for Daniel. Every note was for a lost life. The soldiers were crying, but it was a beautiful crying, catharsis, release. James sang 3 more songs. Papa's got a brand new bag. Get up. Please, please, please. With each song, the energy rose. Some soldiers who could stand were dancing. Those in wheelchairs were swaying. Even those on stretchers were keeping rhythm with their heads. For a moment, just one moment, the war was forgotten. When James started "It's a Man's World," the sky suddenly lit up. Orange, then red, then white. The sound of explosions, the ground shaking, screams. The Viet Cong attack had begun. "Incoming!" a soldier shouted. "Incoming fire!" Chaos. Soldiers were hitting the ground. Doctors were moving the wounded. Helicopters were taking off. Stevens ran to James. "Mr. Brown, to the helicopter, now!" But James didn't put down the microphone. "No," he said in a calm voice. "What?" Stevens couldn't believe it. "You'll die!" "These kids might die too." James looked back. "I told them something. I promised them music, and I keep my promises." Another explosion, this time closer. James stumbled but stayed standing. "Gentlemen," James spoke into the microphone. His voice was trying to cut through the bomb sounds. "Can you hear me?" Some soldiers raised their heads. "I know it's terrifying. I know it's dangerous, but I'm going to tell you something." Another bomb, this time very close. Dirt rained down on James. "I'm here, and I'm going to keep singing." James continued singing "It's a Man's World," but now there was something different in his voice. Not fear, not anger, determination. "This is a man's world, but it would be nothing, nothing, without a woman or a girl." The explosion sounds continued, but James didn't stop. Stevens was shouting into the radio, "All units, defensive positions, repeat." But then something happened, something nobody expected. The explosion sounds started to decrease. The gunfire stopped, and there was silence. A strange, heavy silence. Stevens looked at his radio. "What's happening?" A voice from the radio. "Commander, we don't know. Enemy fire has ceased." Stevens raised his head. He looked at the forest, at the hills. The Viet Cong were there, he knew, but they weren't firing. Then a soldier whispered, They're listening." "What?" Stevens turned. The soldier pointed to the forest. "Commander, the enemy is listening. They're listening to James Brown." The next 3 hours are noted in military records as the soul music ceasefire. The Viet Cong forces heard James Brown's voice, and they lowered their weapons. Both American soldiers and the Viet Cong trying to kill them listened to music.
James kept singing, song after song. "Try me. I feel good. Please, please, please." The microphone system was so powerful, the sound traveled up to 2 miles. And 2 miles away, Viet Cong soldiers, 19, 20-year-old young men, sat behind trees, listening. They missed home, too. They missed their mothers, fathers, girlfriends, too. They didn't want to die either. And the music, James Brown's music, reminded them of something. We're all human. An American soldier, Tom Richardson, 22 years old, from Texas, later recalled, "I was lying there with a bullet wound, and James Brown was singing, and I was looking at the forest, thinking about the enemy, and in that moment I realized, they're just like me. They love music too. They're suffering too. And I thought, why are we fighting? If music unites us, why do guns divide us?" 3 hours later, when James finished his last song, something else happened. A hand emerged from the forest, a Viet Cong soldier, and he clapped. Then another, then another. The American soldiers were in shock, but then they clapped too. And for a moment, just one moment, there was no war in Vietnam. There was only music. 30 minutes later, the fire started again. Reality returned. But those 3 hours were remembered by everyone. When James boarded the helicopter, every wounded soldier saw him off. Some were crying, some were waving, all were changed. Stevens shook James's hand. "Mr. Brown, what you did, I've never seen anything like it in military history. You stopped war with music." James nodded. "Commander, music is always more powerful than war. We just need to remember that." In 1970, the Pentagon awarded James the Distinguished Service Medal for boosting American soldiers' morale in Vietnam. But James didn't accept the medal. He sent it to Daniel Morrison's mother.
With a letter, "Mrs. Morrison, your son was a hero. This medal is his. In his final moments, he wanted music, and I gave him music. But he gave me so much more. He reminded me to be human." Daniel's mother, Margaret Morrison, carried that medal until the end of her life. When she died in 2003, she wrote in her will, "I want this medal buried with my son, because James Brown gave him the final gift, to die in peace." Today, at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, next to Daniel Morrison's name, there's a small note, "You left with music." What James Brown did that night in Vietnam reminds us of something. Even in the darkest moments, music can be light. Even in the most violent wars, music can bring peace. And sometimes, just sometimes, one man's voice is enough to stop the bombs. James Brown's performance in Vietnam wasn't just a concert. It was a testament to the power of music to transcend hate, violence, and war. It was proof that in our shared humanity, there's always hope. The soldiers who were there that night never forgot it. Many said it was the moment they realized why they were fighting, not for territory or politics, but for the simple right of all people to live, to love, and to make music together. Commander Stevens later wrote in his memoirs, "I've commanded men in 3 wars. I've seen heroism and cowardice, but I've never seen anything like what James Brown did that night. He taught us that true courage isn't about weapons. It's about standing for what you believe in, even when bombs are falling around you." The soul music Ceasefire lasted exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended and fighting resumed, something had changed. The soldiers fought differently. They fought knowing that the enemy, too, had hearts that could be moved by music. Several Viet Cong soldiers later defected, citing that night as their turning point. One said, "When I heard that music, I remembered my wife singing to our children. I couldn't kill anymore." The story of James Brown's Vietnam performance spread slowly at first. The military tried to keep it quiet, unsure how to explain a ceasefire caused by soul music. But soldiers told their families, families told friends, and eventually the truth came out. In 2008, when military records from 1968 were declassified, the full story was finally confirmed. The Pentagon's report noted, "Unexplained cessation of enemy fire during USO performance. Duration, 3 hours, 17 minutes. Cause, unknown. Effect, significant morale boost for American forces." But those who were there knew the cause. It was one man with a microphone, refusing to run, refusing to be silenced by war. James Brown rarely spoke about that night. When asked, he'd simply say, "I did what any person should do. Those boys needed music more than they needed safety, and music is always worth the risk." But in a private interview late in his life, James revealed more. "That night changed me. I thought I was going there to give them something, but Daniel, those soldiers, they gave me everything. They taught me that music isn't entertainment, it's survival, it's hope. It's the thing that reminds us we're human when everything else is trying to make us forget. The legacy of that night lives on. Every year, on June 15th, Vietnam veterans gather at the Vietnam Memorial to commemorate what they call the night music stopped war. They play James Brown's music. They remember Daniel Morrison and all who didn't come home. And they remind the world that even in humanity's darkest hours, there's always a song worth singing. If this incredible story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who believes in the power of music. Tell us in the comments, have you experienced a moment when music changed your life? James Brown taught us, music is more powerful than weapons. Maybe now is the time we need to remember that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.